This is a map of the bike lanes that are found throughout Reno. On the surface, it does look like there are a lot of connections running all over town. However, not all of these paths are equal. The orange lines represent separated bike paths, which are generally some of the more pleasant places to ride around town. The blue lines, on the other hand, represent painted bike gutters, which are some of the worst places to ride. Good bike infrastructure requires having protected lanes that can be comfortably used by a wide range of age groups and skill levels, so even the most vulnerable of road users can safely make their way around town. It must also have ample connections from various starting points to wherever people are trying to go. A painted bike gutter fails to accomplish this because they lack contiguous connections, on top of being uncomfortable, hostile, and outright dangerous. The idea is that bikes and cars are supposed to share the road, but that isn't what usually happens. Without a physical barrier, there are often close calls between the bike rider and the vehicle. It certainly doesn't help that large trucks and SUVs aren't designed with sharing the road in mind. Truck manufacturers have even admitted to giving their trucks bulky, intimidating designs to boost sales. When considering the width of the vehicle and the blind spots from the A-pillars and hood heights, it becomes apparent that not all vehicles are meant to share the road together. When removing the painted gutters from this map, the remaining bike paths are incredibly disjointed. They are fine for leisurely activities or family outings, but they are not particularly useful for daily commuting. Technically, someone could commute without a car if they carefully plan the route to stick to places that they are okay with, but that shouldn't be a prerequisite. Traversing a city by bike should be as intuitive as it is by car. Fortunately, there is a glimmer of hope that the city may begin improving its bike infrastructure in the near future. On June 15th, Reno launched a new Micromobility pilot program that is meant to make the downtown area more inviting to bikes, scooters, and anything else that is not a car. The city has set up several protected bike lanes, a bike signal, and a protected intersection. For the next several months, they are going to receive community feedback, and afterwards they are going to remove the pilot and analyze the data. The infrastructure may not seem like much, but it is a significant step in the right direction. It does show that the city is at least trying something more substantial than the painted bike gutters found all over town. Hopefully, if the city gets the right kind of feedback, this pilot program can be expanded upon with permanent changes to the downtown streets and more connections in other places. Reno has attempted other micromobility projects in the past, such as with the bike rental program from a few years ago. On May 14, 2018, Reno began a program where 1,000 LimeBikes were scattered around the Reno-Sparks area. The idea was that someone would pay for a ride, take it wherever they are going, and leave it for whoever needs it later. Even though ridership numbers were being celebrated, the project had its fair share of hitches. People would leave their bikes anywhere, which reportedly led to a portion of the fleet either being vandalized or destroyed. It was overall a fine idea with good intentions, it just lacked the infrastructure to support it. This year, Reno has launched a successor to the program, being Bird rental scooters. At first, it was met with well-deserved criticism. People were concerned that it would be a repeat of past mistakes. It goes without saying that this pilot program is a much-needed change. Giving people separated paths to safely ride bikes and scooters complements a scooter program really well. Plenty of people want to ride these e-scooters around town. There weren't many users on the day that I was filming, but on a normal week there are usually between 1,000 and 3,000 trips each day. It is important to give these people a separated path so not to interfere with people walking on sidewalks or other through traffic. With that said, my main feedback for the pilot program is do this but more of it. Not everything here is perfect, but I don't want to nitpick it too much because it is all temporary for the next few months. I rode on the two-way bikeway and the one-way protected tracks. For me, my preference is the one-way tracks. I feel like it is more intuitive to have bikes flow within the direction of traffic, and for the most part, that is the design that is being used. Two-way paths certainly have their use cases, but I feel like if there are going to be points that conflict with turning cars, there should be one-way tracks. Probably my biggest complaint is the plastic bollards. A steel bollard or a concrete barrier would provide ample protection in a case where a vehicle were to unknowingly clip into the bike lane. Similarly, for the protected intersection, I saw cars turning too sharply, intruding upon the space that is meant for bikes. A physical separation would help reinforce the proper maneuvers when turning in a protected intersection. On top of that, getting rid of right turns on red would also help make these intersections safer. Once again, I don't want to nitpick this too much because it is all temporary, but if this project is pursued further, I would like to see more permanent modifications and physical barriers to protect cyclists. Finally, the bike signals are a good start. I think it was already doing this anyway, but it should be leading for people on bikes so they can have more time to start moving before the other cars do. It would also be nice if there was some sort of sensor to check if someone was in the bike lane and is cleared to go, so it can immediately switch to giving them the right of way. Nonetheless, I do like what I see with this test pilot so far. I want to see it extended along more of the downtown streets and further midtown. This marks the beginning of an exciting new change for Reno, where the city is laying the groundwork that will diversify the city's transit options and reduce people's dependency on cars. Micromobility is a good thing. People should have options for how they commute around town, and investing in this type of infrastructure does benefit people who commute with micromobility devices and even other drivers. Last year, AAA research has found that the average annual cost of new car ownership is about $10,000 a year. At the time, maintenance and repair costs were around $9.55 per mile, and fuel costs were estimated to be $10.72 per mile. Since then, gas prices have been rising with no sign of lowering anytime soon. Back in March, it was reported that gas prices in Reno have reached an all-time high of $4.70 a gallon. 3 months later, the average price has climbed to an unprecedented $6 per gallon. This is making it increasingly more difficult for people to actually afford a car, so there needs to be investments to allow people to take cheaper alternatives to get themselves around. A lot of people who drive around probably don't need a car for their regular commutes. According to a study from the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, 52% of all trips, including all modes of transportation, were for distances of 3 miles or less. To put that into perspective, the average ride trip distance of the Bird e-scooters is 1.5 miles. This indicates that a substantial percentage of all vehicle trips can be replaced with cheaper micromobility options to help ease the burden of refueling a car. Not everyone can afford a car, and even if they could, nobody should have to own a car to participate in society. On top of that, replacing car trips with micromobility vehicles also helps improve traffic flow. People like to criticize bike lanes for not being full of people on bikes, but the reason a bike lane may appear empty even if it has the same number of users as a car lane is because bikes are more spatially efficient. The number of people who can pass through a bike lane is a lot greater than the number of people who can drive through a car lane. The National Association of City Transportation Officials has a helpful guide for the maximum throughput a lane can achieve depending on the mode of transportation. If the lane is designed exclusively to move cars, then it can only transport between 600 and 1,600 people per hour. A two-way protected bikeway, on the other hand, can transport up to 7,500 people each hour. With that in mind, traffic flow can actually be improved by simply getting rid of a car lane and replacing it with a bike lane. Investing in more bike infrastructure will improve traffic flow by replacing more of these shorter trips with micromobility vehicles. So better bike infrastructure benefits people who want to use a bike or a scooter to get to wherever they are going, and it benefits other drivers because they are no longer sharing congestion with people who arguably do not need to have a car. In fact, based on recent plans from the Regional Transportation Commission, adding more micromobility projects is now more important than it ever was before. Public transit in Reno is abysmal, and in the time that I have lived here, it has arguably gotten worse. Between the long wait times and the lack of service in too many areas, it is impossible to reliably use public transit with the exclusion of the Rapid Virginia Line and the Rapid Lincoln Line. The crux of the issue is that transit is treated as an afterthought that is meandered along the existing car-centric infrastructure, leading to infrequent buses that constantly get stuck in traffic and bus stops in locations where pedestrians don't seem to belong. This creates a situation where nobody uses public transit because they want to, they do it because they have to. Micromobility helps connect a city in places where transit is lacking. In Reno's case, that's basically everywhere. Everywhere in this town could use better transit. And until that actually happens, having more protected bike lanes provide another suitable alternative for people who do not have a car. Overall, a project like this would help reduce the cost of living, reduce people's dependency on cars, and make the city a better place to live. With that said, if you are a resident of Reno and want to see them diversify their transportation system, please take the time to submit feedback using the form linked in the description. They will be taking responses until October, so that should be plenty of time to experience this test pilot. This does seem like the beginning of a promising change where the city reconsiders having cars be the default form of travel and starts embracing more alternatives.